All right, Justin Vacula here with Pastor Dan Nichols, our second discussion. So thanks for meeting once again.
Sure.
This time we have no live audience. We're just here in an office/storage area to talk about your church's new billboard that's been getting some media coverage locally. So tell us about the billboard.
Well, it hasn't gone up yet,
August 23rd, I thought.
Well, 25th. It was supposed to go up yesterday. Today's the 26th. I got an email from Lamar yesterday saying that it's going to be delayed a little bit, but that's kind of how it goes with this stuff, apparently. But it'll be up this week. So, it's simply, it looks a lot like the I Heart New York symbol, so it's catchy that way. It says I Heart Sex - God, and then it's
the quotes.
It's in quotes, yes. Yeah. So God is saying, it's not I Heart Sex God. At first we had a design that had I Heart Sex God, and I sent him an email and I was like, well, we're not worshiping Aphrodite or something like that.
Right. Yeah, just to put away the confusion there.
Right, so there's quotes, and then, it's a new sermon series that we are promoting on the Song of Solomon in the Bible.
So Lamar is going to be displaying the billboard?
Yes, over by Sam's Club and Sheetz and Kohl's.
Was there any resistance at all from Lamar or any sort of advertising policy?
No, not at all. They did on the billboard though. It does say paid for by Restored Church. Just to clarify for people that Lamar is not saying this. Obviously, they're simply an advertising agency. But because it's a theological statement in nature, they did put on that disclaimer that we are the ones who are funding the billboard. So.
Well, that seems pretty odd to me, as many other billboards probably don't have those disclaimers.
Yeah. Well, I can understand, especially with today's world, you have to try to cover your own butt. So I totally understand it. That's fine. I mean, we did pay for it, so I mean, there's nothing false about.
Although your logo is already on the billboard.
Yeah,
so
it's ours.
It's kind of odd.
No, it's ours. It was
the
just
disclaimer would have to be there too.
It was just funny when I've seen some advertising that's like almost pornographic in nature, and that's okay in our culture, but if a church says that God actually thinks sex is good, then all of a sudden it needs to be, that's what.
Well, you got the billboard up, but my bus ads in Scranton, they were declined with the word atheist on it, so that it was in.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know about that? Okay, well, anyway.
Scranton?
Yes, the County of Lackawanna transit system.
Really?
Yes, they had declined an advertisement I put up. It was a minimalist ad that had the word atheist on it, and the URL to my organization's website, the NEPA Free Thought Society.
Okay.
And they did not accept that advertisement.
Interesting.
Okay, so what led then to the billboard going up? Why the billboard?
We just want to let people know that we're starting a new sermon series, and it's also helpful, the timing of it all we picked because Kings and Wilkes and Misericordia and Penn State, Wilkes-Barre, and all these college campuses, they're getting back into the full swing of things. Fall is a really great time to start new stuff when it comes to church, whether it's a sermon series or even our grand opening last year. We chose it for September 8th last year because families are kind of hitting the reset button, and it's a new start for people. And typically the summer is not great with church attendance because people are on vacations, they're traveling a lot. But typically church attendance really spikes back up in September because people are starting back into their normal routines of life.
So in the article, there was some more discussion about the billboard. There was a pretty long paragraph it said something like God loves sex.
In the newspaper article?
Yes.
The newspaper reported that was going to be on the billboard. There's not going to be a paragraph on the billboard.
Yeah, that seemed kind of strange.
No, there's no. That was simply the sermon series description.
So what was that description?
Yeah,
if you could paraphrase it really quickly.
Sure, I can.
To avoid the dead air in the recording.
I can even read it to you.
Well, here with technology, I guess that helps that we.
Yeah, I can even read it to you. It's pretty simple, really. It's
Right. Okay, we're still.
All right. So the description that we put in there is sex is everywhere, in referring to our culture, but churches typically communicate indirectly on the subject at best, and that's tragic, especially since God dedicated an entire book of the Bible to sexuality. God is the author of sex. He loves it, and he has a very specific design for it. The gravity and overwhelming reach of this topic warrants a direct and honest response from the church. Join us in September for our new sermon series on the Song of Solomon. In my interview with WBRE yesterday, a lot got cut out, obviously, as they normally do. But Sharon, the reporter, she asked me, she's like, your billboard's kind of bold, don't you think? And I looked at her and I was like, our culture is bold. I mean, look at VH1 and Dating Naked, right? I mean, you have to show up at the first date completely naked. You're telling me that's not bold? But when the church wants to get bold, all of a sudden that's not allowed.
Well,
or
this,
that's not.
this is what I'm confused about a little bit. I met with my group, the NAPA Free Thought Society, this weekend. We talked about the billboard at the meeting.
Okay.
And we're confused because the article, you're saying that the church communicates indirectly on sex, but I hear a lot of talk, specifically from the Roman Catholic Church, Catholic dioceses, etc., about sex. And pretty much the answer is no, don't do it outside of marriage. And they seem to be pretty clear on that.
Yeah, let me give some clarity to that. My background typically is not with Roman Catholicism. My background tends to be with conservative evangelicalism, and a lot of times in conservative evangelicalism, especially some of the churches that I grew up around, the whole feeling and the whole vibe dealing with sexuality was that we don't really talk about it a whole lot, and it's typically meant for just having babies, not so much for enjoyment or pleasure. So. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that in some churches it's definitely talked about a lot, but that was probably a generalization. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, so there is a lot of communication about that from churches with sex. Don't do it. It's typically it's kind of nasty.
So you're saying in masses they talk about sex a lot?
Not so much in the masses themselves, but more
where?
When the Catholic, for instance, here in the Diocese of Scranton, they have the Catholic Light newspaper and talk about that. A lot of talk about abortion, a lot of talk about pregnancy.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff like that. So I guess sex is kind of the umbrella there, where you have all these other things, and marriage, and don't have sex before marriage, and some of these. I think it's called Busted Halo or something. This organization, particularly involved with college campuses, talking about how sex is a great temptation in college, and many people are going to be having it, and just kind of don't do it.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking of more would be the public forums, like Mass, like church services. I mean, how many times have you heard a sermon series on the Song of Solomon from Scripture? Not too often. So,
and I think it was Ruth is the other character in the Bible that gets some of that attention. But not so much in the masses either. Don't really hear much about that. It's typically the New Testament, and not much talk about sex.
Right, exactly.
Maybe you'll hear some of what Paul had to say about homosexuality, but apart from that, then.
Right, exactly. I guess we're trying to make the point that look, we're digging into Song of Solomon, and it's something that a lot of people really haven't heard about.
So tell us about that.
Well, Song of Solomon, it's Hebrew poetry. It's beautiful. It's really artistic, and it describes the beauty and the magnificence of what sexuality is supposed to be, and we feel like culture has really cheapened it in a way when there isn't that commitment part. So we think that commitment is very important.
So with the Bible, and particularly the older books, there's a lot of talk about concubines and harems and things like that. So throughout the Bible, there seems to be a lot of different viewpoints about sex.
Well, the Bible never condones that. The Bible, so you gotta understand genre. A lot of the Old Testament genre of literature is narrative or story. They're simply telling what happened. Just because something is in the Bible does not mean it's condoned by the Bible. Does that make any sense?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
We talked about that with slavery. A lot of people say, well, slavery's in the Bible. Well, absolutely, slavery's in the Bible. It's never condoned. It was a social practice back then.
Yeah, there were the particular rules that were outlined about slaves from other nations, or if you happen to beat a slave and the slave gets up in a certain amount of time, then it's okay, or you can mark your slave by putting it all through a slave's ear, things like that.
Right.
So yes, that's also depicted.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were rules. There were rules that regulated it, but that doesn't mean it was condoned. So, I mean, we don't have to talk about slavery per se, but just, again, the principle is just because something's mentioned in Scripture does not mean it's condoned by Scripture.
Okay, so I guess then in Acts, it's more particular about what's said about homosexuality. So
in Acts?
In Acts, right.
The book of Acts, you mean?
Right. The Apostle Paul talking about sexuality.
Oh, you know what? That's actually Romans 1 and 1 Corinthians 6.
Romans, okay.
Yeah, Romans 1 is, the whole letter to the Romans is really Paul's treatise on the gospel, the good news, and he goes through, it's kind of like a logical, it's almost like he's a lawyer and he's making a case for the gospel in Romans. 1 Corinthians was a letter written to a church that was having a lot of issues, and actually a lot of the issues they were having stemmed from sexual things. There was some guy who was sleeping with his dad's wife, and Paul was kind of addressing something like that. There's a lot of other issues too.
Well, this
ancient temple worship with orgies and whatnot.
Yeah, is this the one where he can bring himself before God, but he'll get turned over to Satan or something, that he can't be saved?
Well, Paul used really strong language. What he's saying is, look, if someone is not following Jesus, then they're not following Jesus. He's just calling a spade and saying, like, look, if you're going to follow Christ, you need to actually follow him. And then eventually he gets around to speaking about some sins, and he starts listing through the sins in chapter 6. But then he follows it up by saying, and such were some of you, but you were washed, you were sanctified, you were cleansed because of the good news of Jesus Christ. And so that's the kind of principle that we get no perfect people allowed from, because Paul was very, very clear that there were no perfect people allowed in the New Testament church, and especially the church at Corinth. It was filled with tons of imperfect people that came from all different kinds of backgrounds, and the common unity was the gospel of Jesus Christ, that they followed Jesus.
So you're hoping to speak more about these messages in the sermon series?
Well, the messages are going to be, let me get that out here. It's just going to be four sermons. The first one, we're bringing down a scholar. His name is Dr. McGinnis. He has a PhD in Hebrew. He did his doctoral dissertation on the song. So he's very, very knowledgeable about it. He's 58 years old, has a lot more life experience than Tim and I do. And so he's going to kick that off. It's just going to be an overview of the Song of Solomon. And then the second one is going to be sex and marriage. The third sermon is going to be sex and singleness. Pastor Tim is single. He isn't married, so he's going to be talking about how you approach sexuality as a single Christian. And then the last sermon is going to be disagreement doesn't equal hatred.
Mm-hmm. So what is the approach then to sex for single Christians? Or really anyone at all, I would guess.
For single Christians, well, we encourage singles, people who aren't married, to wait until God provides them someone who can fulfill their sexual desires with a commitment and that covenant. And we believe that's really important.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that's going to be realistic, or that people are actually going to follow through with that? Is teen sexuality pretty common, even teen pregnancy?
Oh, we're definitely in the minority, but I do know a lot of people who have done this, and they found a lot of fulfillment later in life. My parents would be one example. I mean, they abstained from sexual intercourse until they got married, and they have like one of the most fulfilling, amazing relationships, and I feel like their story is a good one. There's lots of people, but definitely in the minority. I mean, we're going to be realistic about it and say we're in the minority.
Yeah, as one concern I had in the piece, which led to this discussion, was that people are not going to get accurate messages about, okay, well, this is sexuality, this is sex, and here's how to be safe, here's how to be educated, things like that. And if they're going to get a message of, oh, no, just don't do it, that's probably going to end in some problems.
Okay. Run through that with me one more time. So the problems are going to be created because we're saying it's a good thing, but wait?
No, not necessarily because of the good thing, but wait, but that they don't have the information about safe or safer sex practices, that they don't have maybe the information, the maturity. They really are going to make poor decisions. Maybe
they're going to make poor decisions. Kind of what the girls on the street were saying, that our billboard was going to cause.
Oh, no, not that the billboard is going to, but just in general, the message of, hey, don't have sex until marriage.
Why is that going to cause more problems?
Because people aren't getting the education.
Oh, you think that the education needs to be the safe sex education.
Right.
Well, personally, we believe that the truth is the safe sex ed that's out there, I mean, you look at birth control methods and whatnot, I mean, none of them are 100%, right? So, you can say, oh, this is foolproof, it's not really. I mean, the only foolproof safe sex that's out there is a monogamous relationship between a man and a woman. In the covenant, with the commitment there to each other for life. I mean, ultimately, we believe that is safe sex.
Yeah, there's one thing to relate, and I talked about moderation in my piece too, and information, and that I understand in society things are just going to happen, that there are going to be degenerate gamblers out there, there are going to be drug abusers, things like that, but sending out messages of, well, just, hey, don't do it, when we know it's going to happen anyway, I don't find it to be very effective. I think if we would happen to educate, I'm not necessarily saying the burden is on you or me or any particular person.
Oh, sure.
If the education is out there so that people can make informed decisions, that's the approach that
I mean, would I rather that people who are going to, refuse our advice and refuse what the Bible has to say about it? Would I rather that they practice safe sex as far as birth control methods and stuff? Sure, absolutely. It's not like it's not like I'm like, go out and do it horribly wrong so that you're cursed. That's a horrible way to approach it. That's not what we're saying. We're simply arguing from the positive light. Like, look what you can have. Look how great sex could be when you have that commitment, when you have that covenant relationship and all that it's meant to be. I mean, I think it's a beautiful, awesome thing. I know my wife and I, we are really, really thankful for what God's given us in our marriage. And it's not going to be given, just so you know, and anyone listening to this, it's not going to be given in a judgmental, condemning, hate-filled tone of, listen, if you don't do this, you're going to be a horrible, terrible person or anything like that. I mean, that would be very wrong for us to go about it in that spirit and in that way. So we're simply trying to say, look, here's what the Bible says. We believe that it could be very fulfilling and there's a lot of contentment. But if you disagree, we'll agree to disagree, and that's fine. And I think if you're really into tolerance, you have to come at it from that angle of we can agree to disagree, even if you're in the conservative evangelical realm too. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me that so much of the tolerance crowd becomes extremely intolerant and really becomes the very thing that they hate whenever someone disagrees with them.
Oh, yeah.
And that just does not make sense to me at all.
And you and I know that we've certainly seen that from the feminist community and these so-called social justice warriors or.
Well, you're more into that than I am. I'm not really too educated on that.
Yeah, one thing I mentioned in my response to your billboard mm-hmm. was a response to people who were just outright saying, "Well, he's a bigot, he's hateful," things like that. And
that was something I did want to address too. No,
yeah,
I don't think it's fair. Just because you believe in God's original design should not mean that you're a bigot. Now, are there a lot of people who are bigots and believe in God's original design? Absolutely. I'd be the first to admit that. There's a ton of people who believe in God's original design. They're very bigoted. They're homophobes, and that's wrong. That's very, very wrong. And I think we're going to address that actually in the very final sermon, that bigotry is evil, homophobia is wrong, that has no place in Christianity. And really, what the example that Christ gave us was one of love. But at the same time, believing what we do believe in God's original design for sexual relationships overall, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a spirit of bigotry or whatever.
Yeah, there's some attitudes that come out there from Christian commenters, and today in particular was Pat Robertson I saw, who had a viewer question.
Don't get me started on Pat Robertson. I will definitely go on record that I am not a fan, and I don't think that he is a very good representation of Christianity.
Yeah, it was a sentiment that he expressed that men are gay because they don't have positive male role models in their lives. At least in the case of one person. Well,
I mean, I don't know. I haven't done a lot of study on that. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of people much smarter than me that study sociology and the way things happen. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with that. Quite honestly, our sermon, the final one, it's not going to be a treatise of why we believe what we believe. And it's not really going to be primarily trying to convince other people to believe what we believe. The whole premise of it is disagreement doesn't equal hatred. So it's a message primarily just to our church body. People are going to come in and hear it saying, look, we need to agree to disagree on this, and how do we go about loving people and not being bigots and not being homophobes, even though we do believe in God's original design. We need to show the love of Christ, even though we disagree.
Mm-hmm. So the issue that comes up then, I guess, for LGBT individuals, when you say that sex ought to only happen in married relationships, but then you do not support gay marriage.
Yeah.
So there are people who are very committed relationships. They've been together for some time. They're responsible. They're dedicated. Whatever. Just like a man and a woman might be.
Sure.
But there are two men or two women, whatever, and they want to enjoy sex.
Sure. First of all, the whole premise of the sermons here is not going to be anything political. And a lot of times when you discuss the issue of the LGBT movement or what's going on with that, it becomes very political very fast. That is not going to have any place in our sermon series. We're not making a political statement. We're not talking about politics. We're simply talking about the morality of things. So for us, if we would simply encourage celibacy at that juncture. And it's not that they can't have fulfilling relationships at all. We actually have someone who's a member of our church who is same-sex attracted, and he pursues celibacy because he believes that is God's will, that God's original design is for the covenant of marriage between a man and a woman. So he has same-sex attraction and remains celibate. So that's what we would encourage. And I know that's not popular, and a lot of people would disagree with that. But again, we're hoping that the attitude could be more of one that we can agree to disagree.
Do you think that works for most people? For most same-sex attracted, as you said, people to just completely be celibate?
You'd have to talk to this guy.
I guess you'd have to bring
I'm not. I mean, I don't want to speak for him. You'd have to talk to him.
Yeah, that's what I see sometimes.
He's going to be giving his story. He's going to be giving his testimony at the sermon. So I mean, afterwards, you're free to ask him.
It's a weird kind of thing to say the Christian community because there's not necessarily one spokesperson or one camp or whatever. But
and Christianity is so fragmented. I mean, there are huge sects of Christianity that really disagree with us, and they are welcoming of homosexual marriage and whatnot. We wouldn't place ourselves in that spectrum, but that doesn't place us in a bigot spectrum either.
So one concern I had then was why be opposed to legality of gay marriage?
Well, who said we're opposed to the legality of gay marriage?
Well, you want, let's see. Well, maybe I'm confused there.
We're not.
You talk about God's original
design is a statement of morality. Now, I do not believe that morality can be legislated. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do not spend a lot of time. For instance, I do believe I'm a pro-life person, but I don't really spend a lot of time trying to legislate morality that way. Like, I don't really do a whole lot of. I don't do pickets. I don't do. Let's try to change the law. Let's try to overturn Roe versus Wade. I don't put a lot of energy into that. What I am is I'm on the board of Pathways Unplanned Pregnancy Help Center, and it's a help center where we're able to help and provide clients with information about abortion and what all that means, and really help people just understand more about what they're carrying. And we believe they're carrying a life, and so I would rather put more energy into relationships and loving people rather than trying to legislate morality. So I wouldn't necessarily assume that we're opposed to legislation for gay marriage. That's a whole different issue that we don't really spend time on.
Okay, yeah, so I guess it could get political as the issues.
It can, but we're not going to spend time on that because it's not.
Sure.
Again, the principle is you really can't. Christians are wrong, I believe, when they believe you can legislate morality. I don't believe it can be legislated.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to hear that you want to keep the politics out of the sermons because there is some traditions in churches they call Pulpit Freedom Sunday.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And anyone listening to this podcast, I hope that you guys are hearing this loud and clear. Like the politics of the thing, that's not where we're at. We simply believe that following Jesus is the best life you can have. We believe what the Bible says, and we're just wanting to talk about the morality of things, not the politics.
So can it be consistent then for a person in your pews or maybe a pastor to say, well, I have no problem with gay marriage being legal, but I don't think it should be? Or I think that...
I disagree. I believe in God's original design, but I don't agree with the legislation of it. Tim Keller is a perfect example. That guy that I sent you the book, The Reason for God. Yeah, he's one of the first leading evangelicals to come out and say, look, you can be for God's design and let the legislation fall as it may. I've never been a super political person. I haven't really put a lot of time and effort into that, again, because I believe the principle you can't legislate morality. And I like Tim Keller's reasoning on that. He's like, look, the government can say what it wants to say, they can do what it's going to do. We're just talking about who we are as with our freedoms that we have in this nation, A lot of people don't have the freedom to do what we do here in America, and it's great. We can say, look, this is what we believe. The Bible says what it says, and leave the politics out of it.
Mm-hmm. So it's mostly the New Testament that's going to inform the sermon series?
No, the Song of Solomon is in the Old Testament, yes. It's right next to Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is just a wisdom treatise from King Solomon, just talking about he had everything. He had all the women.
It's like the vanity.
Yeah, he had all the women, all the money, all the power, the prestige that you could want, and he says it was just like a gust of wind. It was there for a while and then it left. So yeah, it's in the wisdom, like as far as genre, Song of Solomon is in the wisdom, but also the poetic section of Scripture. So.
Okay, so back to the billboard. Some people are saying that your message was bold. Why is it that you think they were saying it's bold, or what is?
I don't
that going
know.
on?
It was one of the reporters for WBRE. She was, I don't know. She just felt like it was a really bold statement, which I can understand. I mean, not a lot of churches take out billboards that talk about sex. I mean, that isn't very common. At least not around here. I'm sure in bigger cities and other parts of the country they do, but.
What were some of the other reactions?
I got a lot of positive feedback. I mean, a lot of Christians have been writing us. A lot of people have been saying, "Man, this is great. This subject needs to be talked about." I got a handwritten letter from a guy who lives in Wilkes-Barre, is in Florida right now. He's coming back after a little bit, and he's like, "I can't wait to come to your church. Can't wait to visit." I got a phone call from a pastor at a Lutheran church down here. He said, "Hey guys, just want to say thank you so much for doing what you're doing, and we support you guys." And so we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. But you know what's ironic? And you and I have noticed this about the Christian community. We tend to eat our own, and most of the flack that we get for the sermon series is coming from Christians.
And what have they been saying?
There's one pastor in the area that wrote a letter to the editor. It's on timesleader.com. And
Who's the pastor?
Well, I don't want to get into that, but you can. If you're interested, you can check
Times
it out.
Leader.
Yeah.
What was the date?
August 25th, yesterday, I think. Anyway, so August 25th, yesterday, is the letter to the editor. And anyway, their church, this pastor disagrees with us. He doesn't think that the billboard is appropriate. We're trying to market God or make God a commodity to be sold. So it's almost like we're trying to peddle God, for instance, and that
seems to be quite the tradition within churches anyway, right? I mean, people are advertising themselves.
Well, from your perspective,
sure. Holy rollers out there. You're tithe 10%, and we talked about this before, that you don't like the whole prosperity gospel message and everything else.
No, we do not buy into the prosperity gospel. That's a load of garbage, and that is not what we're trying to do. What we're simply trying to do is we're trying to marketing.
Peter
a lot of
Pop-off kind of deals,
The truth is exactly. People have, especially in conservative evangelical church circles, a lot of people have problems with marketing, but unfortunately, they only have a problem with marketing because they don't understand that every church markets. If you have air conditioning in your church, you're marketing. If you have chairs to sit in, you're marketing, right? Come in, it's comfortable. You can sit, you can enjoy yourself. So I always think it's funny, and I'm not trying to poke fun at anyone or anyone who's... So just make that very clear.
I'll poke a little bit fun, especially when we see these tracts that are handed out. We have people advertising at the farmers market and Cherry Blossom Festival. I don't blame them. I mean, that's what you have to do to exist, right? You can't just be doing nothing and hoping that people are going to walk in, right?
People have made the accusation, well, you're just trying to get people to come to church. Absolutely, we're trying to get people to come to church. We're not going to back down from that. Right? Yeah. But every church tries to get people to come to church. You have pews, you have air conditioning. Like I said, everyone tries to make the environment of church comfortable and, whatever. It's just, the only question is to what extent. So really what this pastor is saying is that's too far. The billboard is too far. But I think it comes from a realization.
These vacation Bible schools where
I love
they're
those.
going to be teaching religion to 3-year-olds or something.
Yeah, we like those. We're all about it.
They're marketing there.
Sure.
So why now all of a sudden is the billboard a problem?
Well, and that's my question. Yeah, and the other thing that you can read about in the letter is that it's a disagreement over interpretation. So some people believe that the Song of Solomon is only allegorical, meaning it's Jesus Christ and his bride, the church, which is definitely a part of it, and Scripture does use that metaphor of Jesus returning for his bride, the church, and we believe in that metaphor. But if you understand the Hebrew poetry, which is partly why we brought Dr. McGinnis in, Dr. McGinnis is going to clearly articulate that, look, you can try to get around it as much as you want. This is talking about sex, okay? Real intimate, and the poetry is really, I guess you could use the word explicit. When you start breaking down what the poetry means, it's definitely... very real and very raw, and Dr. McGinnis is going to demonstrate that very clearly.
Isn't scriptural disagreement at the core of theology that people are going to say that there's no one interpretation, and here are just several different interpretations, and many of them are good interpretations. They fit with this, and let's look at some church history or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's easy to draw any kind of line in the sand on that and say, oh, well, this is what I think it is. Oh, no, you're wrong on that. Like, we could, it's weird. I found it here. It's okay. It says, we all have an inborn desire to be loved, but many people feel cast away, unloved, and wanted. To emphasize that God loves sex in order to talk about sex is tragically misleading.
I disagree. And, I mean, my attitude would be the same that I would want from other people. I'm just going to agree to disagree, and I'm not going to try to respond with any type of hatred or animosity or anything, but I disagree with our
holy God is not a commodity that is to be marketed like a new line of clothing. Well, I've certainly seen a lot of clothing that has the it's like the Sprite symbol, but it says Jesus or something like that, refreshing or whatever. And we have the Christian rappers out there and the Christian side hug and the Jesus pajamas. It's out there everywhere.
Everyone's got it.
Unless he's disagreeing with that too. I guess he would have to be consistent on it.
We talk to our members Sunday night. There are definitely ways of marketing or advertising in this way that we would disagree with. I've seen a church use a sexual innuendo as and I would disagree with that. I've seen a church take the Victoria's Secret logo and change it into Victoria's Secrets, and the sermon series was Victoria's Secrets. And to me, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm taking the I Heart New York, which has nothing to do with explicit sexuality as far as, it's just something memorable. But the Victoria's Secret logo, it's like all these guys coming into church are thinking about the model that they were looking at yesterday on the computer screen. So, I mean, there definitely are things. See, and even me, like, this pastor has certain lines that he wouldn't want to cross. I have certain lines that I wouldn't want to cross, and that's the way we roll. There's certain things we are willing to do and other things we're not willing to do, and we just need to agree to disagree.
Maybe you could have a discussion with him, a recorded discussion with him.
Nah, that's okay.
But it's a bit different because when I heard back from pastors in 2009 following some church-state activism, they were saying stuff about how I'm taking their rights away and that I want to make religion illegal and stuff like this. And when I said, hey, let's talk about it, it took like 2 years for that to happen. So I don't know, maybe you'll have to wait 2 years for talk with this pastor. I don't really know. So interesting. So were there any other reactions that you got?
Oh yeah. The church is all about the gospel. Sex has, you shouldn't talk about sex because church should be all about the gospel, which is ironic because if you listen to our podcast, we talk about the gospel every single Sunday. We actually just had another person on Sunday become a follower of Jesus because of the gospel message, and it just that comment that was posted online that just showed that the people who were posting that really didn't understand what we're all about as a church. And so there has been some misunderstanding. That's part of what happened.
Going to get that. You're certainly not going to have everyone agree with your advertising or
And another post was said that we should leave this up to parents. We shouldn't do this in church and whatnot. And I was like, the truth is it's everywhere. I mean, it's on the computer screen. It's in every sitcom. It's
definitely on the computer screen.
Yeah, definitely on the computer screen. It's in our living rooms, on sitcoms. It's on other billboards when you're driving past, and all of a sudden when the church wants to speak about it, it's like, oh no, that's such a bad idea, that's terrible. It's like, really? Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to talk about it too. But
so there is one concern, maybe you've heard this, that if people are going to get married because they want to have sex.
Oh yes, that's always, getting married just because you want to have sex is not a good idea, and that is a problem in the Christian community that I've noticed. A lot of people will rush into marriages very, very quickly because they feel like it's the right thing to do. So they just, first person who comes along, boom, they rush into it, and then they find, oh my goodness, there's so many other things I should have thought about. I should have gotten wisdom and counsel from other people. So no, I mean, we definitely want to help people. I mean, if there are, not if there are, we know there are a lot of singles at our church. There's a lot of college students coming. We have a lot of, especially students from Wilkes University coming. We want to help people make wise decisions, not just rush into things foolishly. So, marriage is something that actually Tim Keller, the guy who wrote the book Reason for God, he also wrote another book called The Meaning of Marriage, and it's a book that we use in premarital counseling. We always recommend premarital counseling before a couple would get married, just to help them think through a lot of different issues, not just, oh, hey, I want to get married so I can have sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another verse in the Bible, too, where I believe it's Jesus talking that said, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery. Is that going to come up, or what are your thoughts on that verse?
Well, you need to understand the context of that verse. Jesus is going through a lot of different... Okay, so, a little history. That's in Matthew, and it's in what's called the Sermon on the Mount. And throughout the Sermon on the Mount, what Jesus is doing is he's pointing out to a lot of the Jewish people who had taken the law and they had elevated it and they've added to it. And they wanted to attain to the law. And the whole purpose of the law in Scripture is not that it was something to be attained to, but it was kind of a litmus test or a ruler to show that we can't measure up to God's perfect standard. There's no way we can. That's the whole point of Jesus coming. The whole point of Jesus' perfect life, death, and resurrection is that he took our sin, he did everything for us so that through faith in him, we can have a restored relationship with God. So what he does is he goes through, he talks about lying, and he talks about divorce, he talks about all these different things. And he gets to this section on lust, and what he does is he says, okay, the law, according to the law, you say if you commit adultery, right, it's just, if you sleep with another man's wife, then that's adultery. And so what he's doing is he's trying to show, look, you're not going to get perfection just because you don't take another man's wife. True perfection, God's standard, is so high, there's no way you can attain it. There's no man who's ever gone through life without, looking at a woman and going, oh man, it'd be great to have sex with that woman. Every single guy struggles with this issue. And so he was trying to tell the religious the religious leaders at the time and the people that were listening, look, you think you can attain perfection by your own human effort? Well, I'll tell you, boom. And he just, throughout the Sermon on the Mount, he consistently says, oh, you've heard it said, the bar is right here. Well, I'm going to throw it so far up that there's no way you can attain it. That's why Jesus was here.
It seems that it's setting people up for failure in a way.
Not really.
No?
It would be if Jesus didn't come. I mean, the whole point of the gospel is that we are not God, and in order to be in right relationship with God, there can't be any rebellion, there can't be any sin, and we're so full of it, of sin and rebellion because of the free will that he's given us. So, I don't think it's bad at all. I think what's amazing is that God would even choose to send Jesus and to remedy the problem in the first place.
Or why even have to go through all that? Why not just...
You have to ask God.
Well, that's one thing that...
You don't plan on doing that, huh?
No. I've asked some questions before, and I wasn't a religious background, as you know. But we sometimes talk about the problem of divine hiddenness. Why is it that God is so hidden and he's not so obvious?
Well, he isn't. No, he isn't hidden at all. I know you've written about this and whatnot.
Yeah.
He's not hidden at all. He has revealed himself in the person and work of Jesus Christ, and his love displayed in Jesus is phenomenal.
Yeah, but then we get to the problem of religious pluralism, and then, I see, look at the trees, and that's
all right.
Shiva,
So basically, this is going to be a 5-hour discussion.
Yeah. So we get into that. That's the lust verse there. So you talk about the final sermon that's going to be this, and I guess we already touched on it, that disagreement isn't hatred.
Here, hold on. I want to come back to the lust thing one more time.
You want to go back to the lust.
There is... I don't want it to seem like what Jesus was saying is, hey, losers, there's no way you can do this. Haha, you suck. I mean, that's not what he was doing. What he was saying was, I am the remedy. This is why I'm here, because you cannot do it. And so I believe God is loving in spite of the fact that, our rebellion has separated us from God, and that's our own rebellion. And so, anyway, it's not that Jesus was just toying with people. He was trying to point to himself. What he was trying to do was try to say, look, I am living the perfect life for you. I'm dying on the cross. I'm coming to life again so that you can have a right relationship with God. Don't think that you can do it in your own human effort. We have copies of How Good is Good Enough. Same principle. If it's all about being good, then how good is good enough, and how good do you have to be? And the author, Andy Stanley, he talks about the whole point of the gospel is we aren't good enough. So anyway, I just wanted to
in ethical
make that
discussions,
clear.
you'll have some virtues, maybe like temperance, prudence, and it's usually good to avoid the extreme when thinking about what are these standards? It seems that realistic standards would be the best ones to go for. I mean, if you're going to start, for instance, losing weight, it's not going to be realistic for you to walk 5 hours a day on day one or something. Or
sure.
Be able to run that marathon in day one, that you're going to just do it gradually. And if your trainer was saying, well, here's the standard, and you don't meet that standard, that doesn't seem to be a good system.
Yeah, but standards only have power. I mean, they're only empowered because there's someone in charge. And the whole point of Christianity is that I am not in charge, you're not in charge, God is in charge.
Why is it that someone has to be in charge for there to be a standard? I mean, there could just be a guideline. It could be a personally imposed guideline.
Again, that's what you're going to have to take up with God. We believe that He is in charge innately. I mean, He is the ultimate intrinsic who is in charge. He's revealed to us who He is, and we're just simply obeying. Which I know completely is juxtaposed to the atheistic mindset.
Right.
So, yep.
Yeah. Although we get several different interpretations, though, about what different religious people say about what the standards are, and through looking through all those interpretations, there's a lot of disagreement within certain sects, within even this Christian versus the Methodist community, one Methodist church versus another.
Sure.
So all these kind of people are saying, well, this is what God's standard is.
Well, and the reason that is because we live in a sinful, broken world. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree that the world is somewhat broken. I mean, all you have to do is turn on the news. We live in a broken world, and that's what happens. There's a lot of disagreements. There's a lot of the chaotic mess that has resulted because of our rebellion against God.
Yeah, I mean, downstairs at the Center City Cafe, you have grilled cheeses being sold for $3.75. That's a scandal. Forget about.
That's how you know.
Yeah.
That's how you know there's a sinful, broken world.
Yeah,
Wow.
but really, I guess.
Nice illustration. I like it.
The realistic perspective there would be, well, the market is actually.
Wow, that was a jab right there.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, oh, I want my grilled cheese to be less expensive.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
first world problems here, right?
Okay,
but
sure.
yeah, obviously a joke there. I mean, some of the stuff going on in the Middle East and Ebola and Ferguson and all
Oh my
this
gosh.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see.
Yeah, but yeah, that's certainly human action and a lot of failure. But I don't see religion as really being the cure for it, though.
Oh, I don't either. We agree on that too. There's a big. I know you're going to hate this, but I see a huge difference between religion and relationship. Religion says I can do it on my own. It's all about me, and I'm going to work very, very hard to get to God in my own power. And that is not the gospel. The gospel is not about religion where you are attempting to reach God in your own power. The truth is, a relationship with God is God has attempted to reach us through Jesus, and it's completely different. And I believe that's why Christianity is separate. It's different. It's unique because every other religion out there, it all comes down to me. How good I am, how I can attain. The whole point of Christianity is it's not about me, it's about Jesus. It's totally different.
Well, some in Islam would say, well, these are the standards that Muhammad set forth, and this is what I want.
And you have to attain it. Christianity, true Christianity, does not say that. And I know you hate that, true Christianity versus other versions. But the essence of the message of the gospel is that we cannot do it in our own power. So that sets Christianity apart from any other religion because every other religion is about what you do. How you can attain salvation.
But here the problem, and I guess this goes back into the free will discussion, and the omniscience discussion, which would be another thing, and I think we touched on that. I'm not really sure of it. In our recorded the other one with the audience. But if God knew that people with free will would do this, or this is what would happen as a result of free will, then why put this whole motion in forth anyway?
Again, you're gonna have to ask him someday.
Well, that's one of the problems. Like when we get to these questions that seem to be significant challenges, it's always
you've got significant challenges. You've got significant challenges too. For instance, you say that we believe in
an
uncaused. You believe we believe in an uncaused cause, right?
Oh, I say I don't know.
Okay, well, they say I've seen this on atheist websites and blogs and whatnot. Christians are idiots because they believe in an uncaused cause. Well, you believe in reason, and we talked about this the first thing. You're all about reason. Well, reason is an uncaused cause. You can't just have this ethereal reason out there. I mean, that would be your God.
We see that the reasoning is reliable mechanism to reaching truth.
Right, but who caused reason?
Utility.
How was reason caused?
Well, I don't think that who is the right one, but
okay, how was reason
seems to be
caused?
an emergent property of the brain.
Really? So how was the brain caused?
So we go back. And
Yeah, exactly.
We
So
have this, but I think the same thing happens
atheism.
with
No,
God.
hold on. Atheism believes in an uncaused cause just as much as Christianity
Say
does.
it's a cause. Well, if you go back to, well, why does the universe exist?
Yeah.
Or what was the cause of the universe? I mean, we look around and we see, okay, well, we see a building, and a building should have a builder, right? We see a ship should have a builder. We use this reasoning, but then
Right.
at the level of the really, really, really small and like all the quantum realm or whatever. Not to
So
go
you believe
into-
in intelligent
not
design?
Well, hold on. Not to go into a Deepak Chopra quantum thing here, but at the quantum level, I think cause, effect is a lot different than what we see here. As we see, oh, well, that box is there, so surely there was a reason that box was there. Or if we go to the cosmological level, well, how is it that the universe exists? Was there a cause to the universe? To say, well, the cause that we see on this level, on the macro level, is a lot different than what would be the case at the cosmological or the micro level. So in that case, I say, I don't know. Maybe, for all I know, that these particles always existed.
So you
Maybe we're part of a multiverse. Maybe it's a computer simulation. I don't know.
Right. Which puts you exactly where Christians are. I don't know. I'm putting my faith in Jesus. Right?
But with the
so with
Christians
atheists,
doing,
I don't know. I'm putting my faith in reason. I'm putting my faith in science. I'm putting my faith in observation. We all have gods. We just choose which God we're going to follow.
well, I don't think it's a god. I'm not saying
Absolutely
reason's a
it is.
supernatural thing in any case.
That's your ultimate. That's your ultimate. If we, I mean, okay, for definition's sake, we'll say your God is your ultimate. So your ultimate is either reason, science,
I don't think it's
observation.
really an ultimate either, because if we find that our reasoning is wrong about something, we're happy to reform that. And if we find for some reason that reason is unreasonable, then we'll be happy to reform that.
But how could you reform it if reason doesn't exist?
Well, David Hume...
How could you reform anything if reason didn't exist?
Well, David Hume, for instance, talks about the problem of induction, that if we say, well, why is it, for instance, that we assume that the morning will be bright? Because if you're going to say, oh, well, the morning is bright tomorrow because it was yesterday, then you're using reason to justify a reason. And that seems to be circular logic there. Mm-hmm. But it seems that we can't escape that we have to start somewhere. So here, I could say, okay, I'll start with reason, and we'll say, like, we can't do this. And the Christian is going to do that too. When you're going to make conversations appealing to any kind of logic, any kind of reason or understanding, you're going to have to use reason to do that. It doesn't seem like we could really escape that.
Right. So the question is, how do we have reason?
It seems like you're going a step further, though, and you're saying...
How do we have it? Where did it come from?
Well, it seems just to be an emergent property of humanists
Of humanists?
Humanness.
Humanness.
The human
well, where did
condition.
humanness
Because
come
I was
from?
like, I don't really think that the reason of ants is going to be similar to that of humans, if there really is any intelligible way to use that term.
So reason came from humanity.
I don't know where it came from, per se.
Right.
But it,
so you don't
it makes
know.
sense. I was like, okay, well now, I'm really cold outside, and I find that I rub these two sticks together, and it starts fire. So it seems to have a utility here, that there's an instrumental thing here with reason. If we have a problem, we're going to ask questions. Well, how do we do this? How do we advertise the church? Oh, well, I know. Let's put up a billboard.
There you go.
It's like we sit and
There
we
you go.
talk about these things, and we find
figure
good
them out.
ideas. Right.
So you put your faith in reason. I put my faith in Jesus.
Well,
Everyone puts
I
their
wouldn't
faith
say
in
I
something.
put any faith in anything.
You don't
Because
believe in anything?
Well, no. The faith is a lot different. When people say they have faith in God, they don't simply hope, or they don't simply guess or want it to be the case that God exists. When they're saying they're having faith, they're saying that's what they believe. Not even so much trust. Maybe they'll trust in the Bible or something like that. But when they say, well, I have faith that Jesus walked on water, they're making a statement of knowledge. They're saying that that's what they know, and this came from the Bible or personal revelation or whatever other thing they're using to back it up. But I think it's a lot different than say, oh, well, Joe Schmo said that if I jump off the side of the building that I'm not going to die from a 100-story leap or whatever like that.
Listen, if you want,
I think that's a lot different than like I have faith in Jesus and I have faith in Joe Schmo. Is like
the semantics of it. You can.
Well, the semantics are important because I think this word is just used like you have faith in your wife, or you have faith that your wife loves you. Like I hear this kind of stuff.
Hold on. So why are semantics important?
Because it's important to be precise about what we're talking about.
Why?
so that we can understand each other.
Why is understanding important?
We need to have intelligible conversation.
Why?
Because otherwise we wouldn't be able to communicate effectively.
Why do we need to communicate effectively?
And I find that to be instrumental again. That it
Why?
leads to some kind of
Why is there any value in that?
That we want to live a life that's fulfilling. We want to be able to understand the world. We come up with these value judgments of, well, I think this is important. You know, some people might be on the square collecting sticks or something, and they find that to be a worthwhile goal. And
Sure.
other people will say, like, oh, I really enjoy horseback riding, so I'm going to spend a lot of my time horseback riding or whatever. These people have different values, and I
Sure.
think at a very base level, people find understanding and communication to be important.
Absolutely. So you are searching for value, contentment, right?
Value in what?
And contentment.
Right.
You're searching for value and contentment in life, and you do that through whatever you're all about. Reason, science, observation. I don't see you as all that different from Christians. It's just in a whole different vein.
Well, yeah,
in the
think
sense of like we're all doing the same thing. We're just doing it in different ways.
Yeah, just through different mechanisms here. But when you're
absolutely.
going back to like when I'll say something like, well, I don't know, but then when you say, well, God must have a reason, but I just can't understand it, I think that's a lot different.
So you want to be firmly you want to plant yourself firmly in disbelief.
Yeah, well, I think that's, I guess.
But that doesn't make any sense.
It's been an element of my identity in some way. It's how I've at least publicly identified.
I've noticed that, yeah. I don't understand how disbelief and uncertainty can lead to confidence and assurance.
Oh, well, I think uncertainty is really good. For instance, I've been learning poker and playing since December, and when I started, I think, oh, this is going to be an easy game. I'll just be able to run over people, and I'm just going to use this strategy, whatever, and I'm going to win. And then I find out, oh, well, people are doing things in other ways. So then I start to doubt my own abilities and say, okay, well, I'm going to be a little bit more humble here and look into how things are done to be more effective. So I think uncertainty can be a really good thing because
but if you just only stayed there and said, wow, I suck at what I'm doing now, but you didn't pursue a certain cause of action to improve, then you wouldn't improve, right?
In poker, I think that there really can't be certainty, but there can be more effective ways in which to do things.
Yeah, but the principle is for life. And what I'm saying is, if you plant yourself firmly in disbelief, but you don't find something to move forward in, then you haven't planted yourself firmly anywhere. And
but I don't want there to ever be really a firm planting because I always want to question and say, like, well, I could still improve, I can still do better.
Okay.
There's certain ways, and maybe it sounds the same about what you're saying. Oh, well, God has these standards and we can't reach them, but we could still improve and we could still do this.
The way that we improve, Christianity teaches that the way that we actually improve and the way that we grow in what you would call morality or becoming more like Jesus, the only way we grow is by establishing a restored relationship with God in the first place. So it's not about us doing better. Jesus was better for us, so we put our faith and trust in Him, and God actually helps us to become more like Jesus.
So there's still some sort of standard that you're reaching to.
Well, and hence the sermon series. Yeah, we want people to come into a relationship with God. And through that relationship, we do believe that there are standards and the Bible is true. And I mean, you can't read the Bible and say like, well, no, God doesn't have any expectations or standards. Of course He does. The truth is, though, it's not going to be accomplished because we're so good. It's accomplished because Jesus was so good on our behalf. And through a restored relationship with God, we actually are empowered to grow and to understand what life is all about in the first place.
Okay, so I guess then on a related note or some other discussion that came up that I found was interesting is you've been sharing on Facebook, there was a story you heard about, and I just hear this in general, so maybe it not necessarily has to be about the person, but I hear these stories all the time about, well, I was into drugs, I was having a really bad life, and I couldn't do anything to improve my situation, but then I turned myself over to God, and then my life was better.
Yeah.
I hear these things a lot, and what really saddens me sometimes about this is when people say, well, it wasn't me, I didn't do it, I didn't have credit for it, but it was all God that did it. And
yeah, there's a balance to that. What they're saying is they're trying to demonstrate an attitude of humility, which for Christians is the highest ethic. Right?
So what I heard, it was from one woman at the Prayer on the Square event, and I asked her, well, okay, you said that you used to abuse drugs, alcohol, whatever, and that nothing worked. But it was only until you turned yourself over. But don't you think that you made some steps outside of a miracle happening or whatever you said?
When people say it's all God, God did it, what they're saying is God is the one who calls the shots. He's the one that really is the ultimate intrinsic, the one who causes what happens in the universe. He's the one that's in control. And so what they're doing is they're demonstrating an attitude of humility. But yes, absolutely, on a certain level, I mean, it's not that we're robots and we're just, like puppets on a string. Yes, there is some personal decision-making that is involved. That's free will. And I believe that firmly. What people say when they say God changed my life is they're trying to give credit where credit's due. And humility is something to where, like, really at the root cause of all sin is the sin of pride. Pride is like the base component for, you look at sin, whether it be sexually or with money or with, whatever. You take it in any category. At the root base of it is pride, and that's what the Bible teaches. So, for Christians, we try to pursue an ethic of humility, trying to say, look, it's not about us, it's all about God, because God is for God. And, I'm sure you've written plenty of blogs about that issue as well. But
yeah, so when God would intervene on someone's behalf, what exactly happens there? So this woman is addicted to drugs or something, and then she said, I prayed, and all of a sudden the next day that I just didn't want to do drugs anymore. Like, what happens there?
Well, God is a person, meaning he has intellect, knowledge, and will, right? So intellect, emotions, and will. I got that wrong. As a person, he has intellect, emotions, and will. He is a real person, and he made humans in his image and likeness, and he loves us and he cares about us. And so when people say, well, God intervened, he changed my life, what they're saying is, I now follow Jesus, the perfect example that God has given us for life, and they've become followers of Jesus, I think is really what they're trying to say.
So the problem that I have is that, well, why would God intervene on behalf of Jane Public while all this bad stuff happens with Indian Ocean tsunamis? Or
how could a good and loving God allow evil?
Yeah. That's I guess the more general. But so she's going to intervene on behalf of Jane Public,
right?
But then all these people over there are going to die. So why is it that he intervenes there but not over there, and that these things happen?
I don't have an answer for you. I mean, you're gonna have to ask God someday, basically. I mean,
well, yeah, that's the problem there, and as Bertrand Russell would say, like, why no evidence, God? But he said if he was, it was an interview who asked him, well, if you were so firm in your disbelief and you were to die and see God tomorrow, what is it that you would say? So I guess we have a lot of these questions to answer.
Oh, absolutely.
But with me, it's a bit different. That when I get to some of these problems and I can't find a good reason to answer the problems, and the conclusion is that, well, maybe the Christians are wrong about God.
Yeah, it leads you to that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it doesn't, and the reason is I can't, and we talked about this when we had our meal the first time, I don't put as much, whatever you call it, belief, trust, faith, I don't know which one you'd like to use, but I don't put as much trust in my
confidence, I guess.
Okay, confidence. I don't put as much confidence in my intellectual abilities as you do, and I don't think that the physical matter of my brain is as trustworthy as a personal God who created everything and has left us plenty of evidence, specifically in his son Jesus, and his perfect life, death, and resurrection, so that, I don't see any reason to put confidence in myself. I see a lot more reason to put confidence in God, even though I don't have answers to every little thing. I wouldn't say that you wouldn't claim that you've arrived at evidence for every little thing either.
Right, but if I found a reason to think that what I was doing was wrong, like going back to poker, I guess that could be a pretty easy example again, because that's what I've been doing so often.
You keep using the word wrong, though. Like, wrong as opposed to what? Like, what's the standard you're using for wrong?
It would be just a method that wouldn't lead to good results. For instance, the hand ace-ace is much better than the hand 2-7 in poker. That
okay, because it's established by some random person who established the game.
Well, that the hand 2-7 is not going to win.
So you do believe in intelligent design?
No.
What a great illustration!
The hand 2-7.
The designer of the game of poker,
no,
and because there was an intelligent designer, you know that there's a standard and an understanding that, oh, this hand is better than this hand.
Well, that might
Justin,
be,
you were giving me awesome illustrations, man.
That might just be human thing, not necessarily supernatural intelligence.
No,
but
it's a great illustration. I like
if
it.
you're going to push all your money in and go all in with a 2-7, you're likely going to go bust. If
Why?
that's going to be the hand you play, because
Why?
other hands are going to be stronger than that one.
Why would they be stronger?
Because they just have more.
Because the game was designed by. You listen. You know I'm right on this one. The game was designed by someone who had intellect, emotion, and will. A person, someone personally designed that game to be played in a very specific way, and that is how you know that 2 and 7 is not as good of a hand as 2 aces.
Well, certainly there's going to be strategy that's going to be better than other strategies in game, and we
But
can
why?
measure this.
Because the game was created.
Well, not because the game was created, because there are certain expectations.
What are you talking about?
I mean, if you're going to
If there's
play,
no rules, if there's no designer of the game,
no, there are
you can
rules
just,
of the game.
Then
sure.
how do those rules come to be?
Well, the rules are different than what the outcome would be, because anyone
No.
can sit down
How
and
did the
play.
rules come about?
Someone
did
created the rules.
it.
Sure.
Exactly.
Well, of course, that's how games work.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
How else would they?
Interesting. I think it's a little example of what happens. So on a micro scale, it's what happens on a macro scale. I firmly believe that.
But I don't understand, because there could be some laws in nature or rules in nature, but I think this is a lot different than something in a game that we know was created by a human. But in the other case, it might be something that just is.
Justin, you were the one using it as an example, not me.
I understand. But I think this is some equivocation that you're using a word in two different contexts here.
No, you were saying, listen, you were saying that oh, is there time?
Oh, keep going.
Okay.
Maybe go like 10 bonus minutes here, I guess.
10 bonus minutes. Oh,
Alright.
excellent.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Right. You were the one that was using it as an illustration. I'm simply saying, look, you're trying to use it as an illustration of, look, I know that this is better than this. And I'm trying to say, yeah, of course something is better than this because it has design. It's designed a very specific way.
I think the design is incidental, though, because there could be something that people can make a game but not necessarily know what the best strategy is. And certainly there are all kinds of playground games that happen that 5-year-olds make up, or say like, oh, I got these game pieces and put it on a board, and these are the rules of the game, but they won't necessarily know how to play it. I mean, I've worked with like family members, cousins, whatever. I guess maybe worked is the wrong way. Where say a cousin of mine teaches me how to play a card game.
Yeah.
But I would best my cousin in the card game. Although my cousin was the one who came up with the rules, they weren't necessarily the best person who played the game because they didn't necessarily know the best strategy.
So you're saying that God could suck at playing the game of life even though he created it?
Sure.
Okay. That's up for you and him. That's up for you and him to work out too. Listen,
yeah, it could totally be the case that there's a creator of the universe who is like a non-moral being or an amoral being, or you have the deistic God who just put everything in motion, but now is just out of the picture, or in episodes of Futurama where, if you're familiar with that, where Bender is worshipped as a god, but he's not
I haven't watched that. No,
the best.
Futurama is not. Definitely, it's not necessarily on my list of entertainment choices.
Maybe
South
Park. South Park had a
South
whole
Park.
episode of it was called Cartman Land.
You would like South Park.
Yeah, I really do. It was an episode called Cartman Land where Kyle is a Jewish follower, and Cartman just inherits all this money and opens a theme park, and he's saying, God, how could you allow Cartman to do this? And everything is going right for Cartman and wrong for Kyle. And
sure.
They're talking about the Book of Job, and
yeah.
They're saying, well, look, Job. Even though all these bad things happened to him, it still turned out good in the end. And Kyle said, no, actually, I don't think it did.
Yeah.
He was saying that. But yeah, I think the rules are incidental to what the best strategy would be. That when we look at reason, for instance, and maybe chess would even be a better example, that there are certain strategies in chess and certain moves that are going to be better than other moves because the object of the game is to win. And if you're going to have a grandmaster sitting down with some random person off the street, the random person off the street is going to get crushed because
sure.
the grandmaster knows the more effective strategy.
So in the game of life, is your goal to be the chess master or the game master?
Well, I'm not really sure what the goal is because it seems that in every few years I have different things I want to pursue.
Okay.
I find new avenues that are exciting. I mean, I've been into poker recently, and I've played Scrabble a lot in the past few years, and I've followed certain causes or written about certain things. And when I go to school, for instance, at King's, I was very much involved with academic pursuits there, but now I'm not there, and now I'm somewhere else. So there can always be new goals, and maybe 10 years from now I'll be in some other state doing something else. And I mean, just Who knows? Maybe joining the Peace Corps. I don't know.
Peace Corps?
So
Really?
I don't know.
Fascinating.
I don't necessarily have plans to do that, but that might be something that happens in a few years. I just kind of take it as it goes and.
Okay. Cool. Well, hey, thanks for talking, man.
Well, even with you've had your backgrounds, and I don't think you would expect it to be here in Wilkes-Barre.
No, I mean, I've been honest about that. I mean, I never expected to be here, but I feel like this is what God wanted me to do. And it hasn't been easy, but He never promised it'd be with me. It'd be easy. He did promise that He'd be with me through it, and that's what I'm counting on. So I find strength and comfort in that, and I think what's happening at Restored is.
We have a car alarm. Oh no, we're good.
No, we're good. No, it's really great. Restored has grown from 1 house church to 8 house churches now. We're forming a lot of great relationships with people, helping them out with their lives, and then attendance at the gatherings has really gone up. I mean, we started as that one little house church with 15 people, and now we're averaging about 100 people. So it's been exciting.
So maybe now the next step is to invite the pastor from the church who wrote the letter to the editor to a meal at Rodano's or something.
Sure. Listen, if you want to have an interview with him, go for it.
No. I mean, because when we first met in 2012.
Oh, to do that. Yes. I don't know. We'll have to see about that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, bro.
Yeah, so that's about all I have. So where can people find you and your church online?
Restoredchurch.org. www.restoredchurch.org.
And I suppose that people are going to be listening to the podcast now, but if for some reason they're listening through some other medium, where can they find the podcast?
For our sermons?
You have a podcast that's also other things in the sermons, right? Our discussion was...
Yeah, the podcast for our sermons is on our website. It's just a podcast tab. We're also on iTunes, so if you type in the search bar Restored Church, we'll pop up as we're right there.
And you have a YouTube channel?
No, we do not. We have a couple YouTube videos as far as promos. We have the biggest point of connection would be our Facebook page. So it's just facebook.com/ same thing as our website, restoredchurch.org. So don't just put Restored Church. It'll be facebook.com / restored. Yeah, restored past tense church.org.
Oh, okay.
ORG. Yep.
All right, and of course you can find me online, Justin Vacula, Vacula.com. Everything will be there. All right, thanks for chatting. Anything else to add?
Good, thanks.
All right, so we went to 6 minutes and the 10 bonus minutes, and that's fine. All right, we could stop the recording now.
Sounds good.